Welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. Today is Tuesday, March the 18th, the day after St. Patrick's Day. I watched an interesting little news item this morning at one, I don't remember what city it was at, but people celebrating had gallons of alcohol mixes, all kinds of different mixes, and uh, they were calling them drunken rage drinks, I think it was. That may not be accurate, but it was something like that. And you look at the tragedy that's brought about in our culture through the use of alcohol and the unbelievable damage done to lives, to minds, to children, to families, to the economy. I mean, the whole thing. Just unbelievable that such a substance exists or is actually used by anyone. It's pretty interesting. And so I thought that was kind of an interesting little tidbit that showed up from St. Patty's Day. You know, it is said that the reason that the Creator created alcohol was so that the Irish would not rule the world. So who knows? It's... Anyway, we're delighted that you're here. And if you have a thought, please push the call button, answer the two or three little questions or some check marks you put in, and that will light up the second call bar down at the bottom. And when you click that, it will send a signal to my system, and I'll know that you want to say hello. And when you say hello, I'll push that button. When you put that inquiry in, I'll push that button and we'll have a conversation. So it would be delightful. Of course, you can also put any questions or thoughts you have in the chat. There's a comment button there, and so you're welcome to put your comments in there. And hey there, Miss Jeannie, glad that you're here, Joe, and delighted to have everybody joining us. Looking forward to how the conversation unfolds today and what's on people's minds. I'm just hello to Joe. Glad you're here as well. And whoa, I hit the incorrect button. Oh, stop it. Okay, I think I got it conquered. Hey, Joe. The title says I'm Dr. Tim. I don't know what to say, Jeannie, but I'm not Dr. Tim. And so we're blessed because we get two different perspectives in this whole process. We get one from Dr. Tim as a clinical psychologist, and we get one from Michael as a naturopath. And coming from, in particular, the first century Aramaic language, a language which is purported by the churches to be about religion, or at least a text involving the words of Yeshua are purportedly about religion, but when you've got the brain cells for, Yeshua says at one point in his teaching, you've got to have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. You've got to have the same brain cells you're looking through to hold a meaning similar to another's meaning. And so Yeshua says you've got to have those eyes to see and ears to hear. And those who go in with a filter for, oh, this is about religion, that tends to be the eyes and ears, the brain cells through which they see those ancient teachings. So they become religious. But when you've got the brain cells for physics, for physiology, for psychology and genetics, what you find is the most monumental, insightful teachings on how the human mind works, how the human mind and body are healed, and how we as human beings function. So that's the foundation, the real foundation from which I love to work, because I found it. I can remember way back when I first started to look at the Aramaic, it's like, this is physics. This isn't theology. And so moving from that arena into recognizing that whatever's going on in the world of physics is going on in the world of physiology. Whatever's going on in the world of physiology is going on in the world of psychology. And most of what's happening in us psychologically is coming from our genes. The mind literally, whenever an energetic pattern that's in our genes, and it doesn't matter if it's from somebody who had an experience 20 generations ago, if a resonant frequency comes in through the senses that matches something that has been in the genes for 20 generations, but never resonated, never brought into play, all of a sudden, that information through resonance, it's like the volume of the information in the genes is turned up and comes to conscious awareness. We become aware of what's there. And as we become aware, we get to start to look into the deeper levels of what it is that creates this world of reality. And of course, most importantly, how to change it. As the title of my book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And the subtitle, and what you can do about it. The whole focus is what you can do about whatever patterns you find in your life that are distasteful. Of course, you can only change those patterns if you can own them. If you are a card-carrying member of the One World Universal Religion of Blame, then not being able to own those energies moving in you, the mind follows your direction and projects them into your brain's image of others. And so most people live in this false, fake world of perception, the world of the mind, never knowing that there are dimensions light years beyond the mind, light years beyond what the multi-generational database that we call the mind, and in fact, it really isn't a mind. The true mind, the true ability to think, which is what we claim the mind does, the true, at least for me, the truest definition I've been able to come up with for thinking is that thinking, as opposed to cycling information in brain cells, if I say don't think about the color of your car, what moves in your mind? Don't think about the color of your car. And people call that thinking. It's not thinking, it's resonance. Best definition I've been able to come up with for thinking is that thinking is the ability to hold love conscious, active, and present in your mind, no matter what's moving there. And the reason why those who are called geniuses is because if you are actually able to think, actually able to hold love, conscious, active, and present in your mind, and there's something in your multi-generational database, your body-mind unit, that's surfacing that's out of harmony with truth, by being exposed to the simple presence of active love, there is dissolution. That's of the universe, is when love is conscious, active, and present in you. And if we lose that, then we've lost our human lives. So when you start really making like your primo goal, rather than to win or to beat somebody else or to get what you want or to make money or control, whatever dynamics have shown up through your unresolved power person dynamics, when you actually really set a tight, committed goal of always holding active, present love in your physiology and always coming from that space. Now, that's a big project in today's world. Because by the age of 4, most every one of us is beaten into mentally, physically, emotionally, verbally, into living in that space of the one world religion of blame, where our mind is like a continuous generator of you made me feel, you made me sad, you made me hate, you made you. It's all about somebody else. But the truth is, what's going on in you is all about you. Everything that shows up in what you call your mind is autobiographical. It may give you accurate information about somebody out there or about something that happened out there. But the one thing you can always be assured of is that it gives you accurate information about yourself. Welcome, Don. And when you recognize that, all of a sudden, everything begins to shift. And so what we're about with this work is recognizing the truth of who we are as love and freeing ourselves from the generational patterns that limit us in function. So that's basically where we want to go with this work. And we're just delighted that you're here to be part of the process. If you have a question or thought for us, I do have a question that was emailed in. And so I'm going to jump onto that unless somebody pushes that call button and has a live question for us. So if you have a thought, now is the time to push that button. Otherwise, I'm going to jump into the question that we have here and see what information we can come up with. So the question came into Jeannie via email. Thank you for that. And oh, my phone just flipped. Give me a second to get back to my question. So again, Jeannie got this, received this via email. The stuff dreams are made of. So it seems I was shown this morning that the attacker and the person just trying to live are both me. So this gentleman had a dream, and he unfolds it, but just to have the recognition, this like I would see this as one of the first steps to coming out of the membership, the unconscious membership in the one world religion of blame. In other words, I've moved this a step closer to me. Ah, the attacker, the one out there who's to blame, and the person trying to live, they're both me. Yes, that's moving out of the blame game. And that's a great insight because in perception, everything that shows up in the mind is smoke and mirrors. As I said earlier, everything is autobiographical. And Yeshua made a very profound comment about perception. He said, your father, now we're not talking about a biological father here, we're not talking about the creator. Here, what Yeshua is referring to is the source of your perception, the source of your thinking, your perception itself. He says, so he said, when your behavior comes out of perception, the father or the source, the sire of your behavior is that perception. So he says, your father is the father of liars, and there is no truth in him. And most people, if we listen to that wondrous quote, I mean, Carl Jung, I would have loved to have gone and spent a few hours, days, weeks, months in the field of Carl Jung. His insights were so profound, just to have been in his energy field, to garner, to resonate with, to gather the energetic understanding that he had would have been phenomenal. And to just be in the space of that kind of wisdom to breathe would be awesome. So Carl Jung says this about perception. He says, those who look without dream. In other words, if perception, which paints pictures on the inside of your eyeballs, is what runs your life, your thoughts, your feelings, your inclination toward behavior, then you're living in a dream. And then he says, those who go within awaken. So it's not until you go inside. So are you a dreamer or are you awake? Those who are stuck in the dream don't particularly like those who are awake, because when people are stuck in their dreams, and their dreams are usually fantasies about how it's all somebody else's fault, and the truth shows up for that person who's stuck in a dream, stress goes through the roof. So if you're looking without and you're believing your lying eyes, yes, they're the one who made me so sad and afraid. That dream of sadness and fear comes from your own brain cells from the past. And everything from the past is a lie. That's why Yeshua said, your father, the source of your thinking, is the father of liars. There is no truth. Perception holds. Never, ever in a billion years will perception ever give you the truth. It can give you accurate information. If you clean up your multi-generational database, it can give you accurate information. But by definition, everything that comes from perception, of course, had to be in brain cells before perception could use it. If it was in brain cells before perception could use it, then it's from the past. It's like you can't go to your computer and get information that isn't in or accessible through the computer. And if it is in or accessible from the computer, obviously, by definition, it's from the past. It had to be there to call it forward. It had to be there in brain cells in order for you to call it forward. If the source of your thinking is the past, then you are the dead, buried by the dead, and the blind, led by the blind. So, what do? You go within. How do you go within? The most reliable way that I know of, and there's only one person on planet Earth that I'm aware of in over a half a century of looking. I've looked everywhere. I think about that old Buck Owens song. I've been everywhere. I've been to China. I've been to Tibet. I've been to Central South America. I've been to Greece. I've been over the whole world. And there's only one person in one time frame who understands and gave a tool for collapsing the mind of the past. That man was Yeshua. It was 2,000 years ago, and he showed us how forgiveness works. And forgiveness isn't about being let off the hook or letting somebody else off the hook. That's the Greek lie from the past that keeps people hypnotized and keeps people believing they've forgiven when they've not engaged in forgiveness at all. And most people in our culture have never, ever engaged in forgiveness. If your language, just listen to your language and your language will tell you the truth. If your language is about, oh, I forgave them. Oh, I want to be forgiven. Oh, I've been forgiven. Oh, I forgave myself. You're not talking about forgiveness at all. Forgiveness is how you collapse the liar. You know the one Yeshua was talking about? Your father is the father of liars. There is no truth in him. Forgiveness is how you collapse the liar. Perception. How you rid yourself of believing that the past is the present, because all the mind, all that this, what was called in the ancient teachings, the mind of man, all that the mind of man can do is replicate whatever's in there. So we can't get out of the lie until we leave perception behind and develop our higher faculties of both reception and understanding. What does that mean? Can I get my mind to shut up long enough? Remember, Yeshua talked about, if you want to live as the presence of love, you got to go into the closet, shut the door. What is that? You've got to shut down perception. You've got to get quiet. You must go within and change what's happening within your own mind. As you do that, everything begins to shift and change. So when you can shut down the mind and you no longer live there, i.e., that's no longer the source of your inclination toward behavior or your behaviors, then higher faculties empower you to receive energetic input directly from the actuality rather than through your perceptual faculties. And in that comes the understanding of the actuality of what's really going on. So that would be my input in that regard. So going back to so our inquiry was the stuff that my dreams are made of, and his recognition, what he had said was, as one is, so he's talking about there are two of us here, but we're one, the one who's trying to survive and the other. So he's saying, as one is the unconscious and the other is the conscious of me. Again, brilliant insight. Where what is deeply hidden in the mind comes to the surface to be exposed. So he's acknowledging that something's coming to the surface, and his question, of course, is, how do I understand this? What do I do with this? So in this dream, he sees a duality and realizes the duality that he's both the conscious and the unconscious, and things are coming up to the surface to be exposed. There's a whole study of dream analysis, which can be very powerful, because dreams come from exactly the same place as perception comes from. Unless you're out of your mind, and you can be, then something resonates. The thought comes of, remember the old story about Scrooge, and he has a dream, and he's sure that it comes from some morsel of bad food that he ate, some sort of physical stimulation. So understanding and looking at the content of dreams can be powerful, because they all come from the same place. They come from exactly the same place as perception, the firing of brain cells. Unless, again, you've defeated your mind. And then, having defeated your mind, you can get direct information from the actuality. So what this gentleman writes when he realizes this duality is really the conscious and unconscious part of himself, he says, I never thought of it like that before. I did ask the Lord to show me something in a dream, whatever he wanted. So he shows me something I've seen many times already around the mountain much. And I assume that means, gee, I've been wrestling with this. There's an interesting story about, who was the character? Jeannie will know, that wrestled with the dream until he got its gift. Yes, wrestling with your dreams can be very powerful. So he explains the dream. Long story short, the unconscious was trying to toss me off a roof. Now, inquiring what this might mean, and, I'm going to come from my brain cells, so I'll create an invitation of looking at this may or may not be accurate for you. If you're coming from a totally different set of brain cells, then, throw this away. But my input, one, what this would mean for me, and two, on an intuitive level, what I get is, have you ever put yourself down with your own speech? Have you ever had any self-deprecating thoughts? So the unconscious is trying to toss you off a roof. That could be a communication. I'd be looking, if I had that dream, I'd be looking at, is there some part of me that's putting me down, that's damaging me, that I need to heal? Any thoughts of self put down? And I would suggest that you take a look at, this might be the inclination for you to do some forgiveness work around your own perception of yourself and the way you treat, see, or deal with yourself. And then the second part, throwing you off a roof, but then he talks about he was able to fly. He discovered out of this he was able to fly. So is self put down, and this would be some worksheets on forgiveness of if it's there, if this is accurate, some self put down perhaps around or that they are inhibiting your higher faculties. So for me, flying would represent, gee, I can go to a whole other place here. Gee, here I'm a grounded person. I get thrown off a roof. A bird wouldn't be concerned about being thrown off a roof. Being thrown off a roof is like no big deal for a bird, but for one of us, whoa. So my inclination would be to move in the direction of perhaps looking at this may be your invitation to let loose of the lower mind, to let loose of the perceptual mind and develop your higher capabilities. And then the conclusion, after he is being thrown off the roof, he and did not know he could fly. In his note, he says, "So I got tossed instead of forgiven." Now, my input on that particular thought, so I got tossed instead of forgiven, got thrown off the roof, of course, by myself, right? So you had that insight. This is me doing this to me. So my first offering would be this would be a place to transform, I think, your idea perhaps of forgiveness. The way I hear you using the word is, I got tossed instead of forgiven. In other words, maybe I should have been let off the hook for something. And my input would be, you will never be forgiven. But harm can come to you when you hold unforgiven thoughts. You can, quote unquote, toss yourself around with unforgiven thoughts. So remember, the world has been given, and it takes, I don't know how many times we have to hear it. I can think of people over the years that really worked deeply with me, and after 10 years of work would still say, yeah, that person did something, but I forgave them. It's like, what are you talking about forgiving them? Yeah, if you pardon somebody, great, let them off the hook. That's what pardoning is. But this work is not about pardoning, and it's not it's not as if there's anything wrong with pardoning. Gee, somebody does something that's really outrageous, brings up all kinds of pain or trauma in me. If I'm in projection, I'll blame them for my pain and trauma, and the world will say, well, just forgive them, let them off the hook. I say never forgive anybody for anything. Pardon somebody if you will. If somebody's off base, yes, absolutely, pardon them if that's appropriate. And then do your forgiveness work. And your forgiveness work is about going inside yourself and removing what never belonged. So again, you'll never be forgiven, but by refusing to forgive, you can be damaged by your own unforgiven mind energy. So he goes on to say, so I wonder if this is meaning, and is there still work to do? Well, from what I've said about so far, I guess you probably already concluded. I'm saying this is sounds like a big invitation for you to go to the next level of doing some deep inner work. So absolutely holding space for that. And what a powerful invitation. And I just think it's awesome that you had that insight right off the bat that this is me doing this to me. So you don't need to be forgiven, but any unforgiven thoughts, any thoughts based in hostility or fear towards self will damage you. And so my input would be pick up the worksheet process and put the pen to the paper and do some forgiveness around that. And then the next paragraph in the question starts out with some pretty powerful words. It says, I don't hate what comes up from the abyss. Now, one of the things we go into in our laws of living class is regulatory speech. And regulatory speech is the speech that literally organizes, and you break that word down, organize. What turns thoughts into organic structure? It's our words. And so listen to the speech that you engage in. There's an interesting science. You might want to jump on YouTube and take a look at a few of the videos out there on cymatics. And cymatics is a study of how sound turns into structure. And when you think about the speech that you use, that each of us use, then that speech becomes the core of what turns into physiology within us. Literally, energetic patterns that become embedded in tissue. And actually, the quantum still point goes right to the core of the antenna system of the human being and creates a point of egress for the energetic patterns instilled in our structure by our own voices. You think about a person who spends a lot of time in rage and screaming and all the stuff that goes on, and the clenching of the jaw and the movement of that energy literally through the whole structure of the mouth, the jaw, the teeth, the brain, down into the shoulders, the throat. So when you say, I don't hate, when you think of it in terms of regulatory speech, you realize that you never speak of something that isn't in brain cells. Let's say I'm going to make a trip. I'm in Kansas City right now, and I'm going to be heading home in a week or so. I'm going to be heading back to Bristol, Virginia. If I called you to say, well, I'm getting on the road now, and I'm not going to California. Well, if I'm heading to Virginia, why in a million years would I say I'm not going to California or Paris or, Alaska, or why would I say any of that? The only reason that I would even make a reference to California or, Alaska or Paris would be that's firing in brain cells. I don't speak words that aren't firing. Now, I can be in denial of something. So when I say I don't hate, they were the first words of this next paragraph of your question. When I say I don't hate, in essence, what I'm saying is there's hate here and I'm in denial of it. Otherwise, I wouldn't use the word. So what is it you don't hate? What comes up from the abyss? But how to clean it out per the course is the question. So I'd be looking at and do some worksheets around hatred, seeing as how that enters your speech system. Shakespeare had a wonderful insight. He said, my words fly up, my thoughts remain below. In essence, he's telling us a fact about words. Words regulate physiology. And when we speak words, yes, they fly up. But where is what remains below stored? But in my physiology. It is literally an energetic pattern of frequency there. So my input when you say I don't hate what comes up would be to recognize that there might be, tied back into that idea that we started out with of self-deprecation. There might be some self-deprecation, perhaps some self-hatred there to work through. And that's what I would suggest you make the topic of your worksheets, to apply forgiveness in that arena. And then how to clean it out per the course. And you make the mention of that you're on page 211 in the course. That's a big trudge. You moved a long way through it. My input, over the years, I've been working with Course in Miracles for 40 plus years. And many times, back when we were on the road, before we settled into Bristol, Virginia to take care of Jeannie's dad and our grandbabies there, Jeannie and I went literally anywhere on the globe we were invited. And oftentimes, because I became, kind of known for working with the Course, there'd be Course in Miracles groups in the centers where I spoke or what have you that would invite me to present. Or often if I did a week-long series somewhere where there were groups working with the Course, I'd make one night about the Course in Miracles. And the way that I usually started my Course in Miracles lesson, if you've been at one of my live workshops, you know that I always use a 4x8 whiteboard. So I got lots of room to put my hand scratching up there. When I would start with a new group with a Course in Miracles, I was always write on whatever medium I had. Again, it was usually a 4x8 whiteboard. Don't study a Course in Miracles. And people would look at me, it's like, wait a minute, you're at a Course in Miracles study group. What are you talking about? Don't study a Course in Miracles. Of course we're studying a Course in Miracles. And beneath that, I would write, learn forgiveness. The Course is not about studying the Course. Listen to the Course itself. It says the truth cannot be spoken in words. So you're studying something that's not the truth, according to the Course itself. Does that make any sense? No, it doesn't. My offering would be what the Course is about. Well, let me back up a little bit. This is something that I get into in the workshop that I used to do and have on DVD. Is that we give words a power that they don't have. The same way we give the mind and perception a power that it doesn't have. And that is the ability to show us the truth. You can't, again, go back according to the Course. You cannot speak the truth. I'm not speaking the truth. Actually, I'm not even speaking. All I'm doing is vibrating a little flap of skin in my throat. That if I have certain brain cells attached to it, I have certain thoughts going on in me that I use those words to represent. If you have the same brain cells that fire in you, resonate in you in response to what I'm saying, what frequencies are coming out of my mouth, then you will understand what I'm saying. If you don't have those brain cells, then what I'm going to say doesn't make any sense. So my take is one of the things that we've done is that we've given words a power they don't have. We've given them the words the power to tell us the truth. And it can't happen. You cannot represent this multi-trillion bit creation with a little flap of skin in your throat. But what you can do is you can give instructions for how to have that experience. And that's what the Course in Miracles is. So the Course is about giving you instructions on how to practice and apply forgiveness. It's not about saying, oh, I know all the words in the Course. I've got the whole belief system down pat. Well, every belief system has the same initials. It's BS. It's just a belief. And with this work, we're not here to engage in belief. We're here to engage in a set of tools. Sadly, what most do, and if you go back and listen to Yeshua never proclaims, I've got the doctrine, I've got the dogma that you need to follow. In essence, he said, I've got the instructions for you. Here, do this. Remember that passage where he talks to people come to him and say, I did miracles in your name. Look at me. I'm so great. Yeshua said, why do you not do what I told you to do? Why do you not follow my instructions? Get away from me. If you've memorized every word in the Course in Miracles, but you haven't applied forgiveness, then you have done nothing with your time. So recognizing that this is a set of instructions, and there are only two places on the planet where over the years I have found the instruction for precisely how, if you engage in it, how to collapse perception, drop into your own unconscious, and clean up the multi-generational database of its errant data. One of them is in the first century Aramaic teachings of Yeshua. being the director of a foundation, is translating the oldest known copy of the New Testament in Aramaic, and recognizing the word forgive there is shabag or shabak, and it literally means to cancel. So you'll notice that you're never in upset about yourself or about someone else unless there's a goal that you have for yourself or someone else that you're not fulfilling or they're not fulfilling. Most people are pretty much happy with everybody in their lives as long as everybody is fulfilling the goals they hold for them. But the minute they stop fulfilling the goals, that's when people go into upset. I'm really mad at you because you didn't. I'm really enraged at you because you won't. If only you would. Notice that all of the upset, there's always a goal involved in the mind of the person who's upset. This is the key way into healing yourself. You will never do that if all you're doing is studying. I don't care whether it's the Bible or the Course or whatever it is. If all you're doing is studying it and you're not actively practicing forgiveness, then you're putting information into the multi-generational database that once it spits it back out, it's now from the past. There is no present moment available from the mind. So stop studying the Course, learn and apply forgiveness instead. And as you do that, the specific instructions in the Course are identical to Yeshua's first century Aramaic teaching on forgiveness. And it's the only two places on the planet I've ever seen it. And therefore, it verifies for me, to my standards. It might not be to somebody else's standard, but it's a high enough bar for me to go, of everywhere I've looked, there are only two sources for this particular, rare, most profound piece of information a human being can have. This is the most important piece of information, I believe, that any human being can have. And that is that when you load a goal in your mind, that goal will resonate content from your past. And out of the content from your past, it will formulate a construct called perception, a reflection of your past. If you're in denial and blaming someone else, if you're in denial and blaming yourself, then you'll project into your brain's image of yourself or someone else. And if you believe that image, then you're now believing the father of liars. And there's no truth in him. There's no truth in perception. So how do you defeat perception? How do you engage in forgiveness? Well, here's how the Course says it. Let go all the things you think you want. Now, what would that be? All the things you think you want. The goals, all the goals you want. Oh, I just want them to take care of me. Oh, I want. They're all. Notice the only time you're upset with somebody, again, unless you're just a generally miserable person, is when you want something from someone and they won't fulfill that goal for you. So the Course says, let go all the things you think you want, comma, your trifling treasure put away. What's a trifling treasure? That's the word's description for the Course's description for a goal. Put away that trifling. If you don't have a human life, if you don't have fueling every cell in your structure the active presence of love, then anything you could possibly want is nothing. Because if you got everything you wanted, but you don't have that, as Paul said, I'm just a tinkling cymbal. You have nothing. You can have all the millions and billions in the world, but if you don't have a human life, you have nothing. And so the Course calls your goals your trifling treasures. Oh, I'd be happy if only he would. I would be happy if only she would. I would be happy if only I could. Well, the goal isn't happiness. The goal is to connect with your human life, which means your physiology is going to be filled with the active presence of love, and you will experience joy. So let go all the things you think you want, your trifling treasure put away. And this is just so monumental. And leave a clean and open space within your mind. What does that mean? I had read that in the Course, but I didn't understand it till I understood it. I didn't have the brain cells for it until I understood it from the first century Aramaic language. And then one day I came across that passage in the Course. It was like, oh my God, this is forgiveness. I've never met anybody working with the Course who knows what forgiveness is or how to do it. I've never met anybody, unless they've come out of the Aramaic, unless they've come out of this. So let go all the things you think you want, your trifling treasure put away, your goal, and leave a clean and open space within your mind. In other words, when you cancel your goal, perception collapses. The past collapses. And when it collapses into its own footprint, and you get to access your own unconscious dynamics. Again, listen to Carl Jung. Until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct our lives, and we will call it fate. It's the practice of forgiveness that brings healing. What does that look like? Whatever, at any given moment where there is upset, especially, look at the goal that you're holding that's causing your mind to use the unconscious dynamic of upset to build your perception in the moment. Specifically identify the goal in the moment and cancel that goal. When that goal is canceled, perception collapses. And now that 9-bit space where perception is usually fills the space is empty. And now the active presence of love can come forward. And whatever underlying data from the unconscious is exposed to active present love, whatever the footprint is of that pained perception about self, about life, about others, by canceling the goal, leaving the clean and open space for love to present itself, for love to be conscious, active, and present, and then the underlying pained energy, the underlying energy that's off the mark, surfaces in that circumstance, in that situation. And as it surfaces, you're freed of it. By simple exposure of that underlying energy to active present love. And of course, you'll notice on the worksheet, there's a reminder in several places to breathe, because it is the active presence of love rides on the wings of the breath. It's delivered to the cellular structure by the breath. If our breathing is shallow and our breath is being held, then the active presence of love doesn't move very deeply into the system. So you'll notice again on the worksheet, there's a reminder to breathe, 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 breathe. So when you have a situation and you recognize that your pained perception is being driven by a specific goal, and you want to identify exactly and specifically what the goal is. And then recognizing that that goal is the driver. You remember the Harvard research that we've talked about, where in a time frame, a person has, they've got somebody in the lab and they're measuring brain cell firings, they're counting, and they've got them hooked up to electrodes, and in a time frame where they could measure 10,000 brain cells firing, 10,000 units of electrical activity happening in the brain, what they determined was the max amount of information that would go into conscious awareness at that moment was 9 bits of data. So 10,000 brain cells are firing. There are 9 bits of data consciously available. When I cancel my goal, that perceptual construct collapses. And when it collapses in on itself, I can access and bring forward the underlying energy, the hidden information that may be all the way down in my genes. And it might be an information that manifests physiologically in my big toe as the big toe disease, or it might be in my kneecap as the kneecap disease, or it might be in my brain as the brain disease, or it might be in my lung, my heart, my liver. Cancel all those thoughts. But wherever there is a disintegrative energy, that energy needs to be forgiven, needs to be removed from the system. And this genius mind 2,000 years ago told us exactly how to do it. And he repeated it again in the Course of Miracles. Let go all the things you think you want. Now, we'll go back for a moment. Let's go back for a moment to that Harvard research. 10,000 brain cells are firing. 9 bits of data come to conscious awareness. Well, obviously, if we're only seeing 9 bits of data, conscious, and there's all this monumental amount of information at the hidden level, at the unconscious, something must be driving that process. Something must select which 9 bits of data. Why do I look at this situation and have all kinds of upset? Because of the situation? No, because there's upset in me, and the goal that I set, the trifling treasure, calls that information into activity. And that information, that data, brought into activity because the mind has this amazing capacity to turn thoughts into pictures. It turns that data that's called into play into a picture world. It converts it literally into pictures, and I see my projection. You know, I've been through this mad 87 different times with 42 different people, but right now, when I say you made me so mad because you wouldn't do this, I've loaded a goal in my mind that calls my mad brain cells into play and makes pictures of you because I think you're the problem in my life. When I cancel that goal, that perceptual construct collapses. And when it collapses, I get to look at the hidden part of my own mind. A clean and open space within your mind where the unconscious dynamics, the lies, the pained constructs of 1,000 generations can be accessed. And so that would be, the objective would be to, with the Course, is to learn forgiveness instead of studying the Course. And then to get down toward the end of the topic of your email, your questions, and I hope I've addressed them in a way that are useful and helpful. Your finishing comments say, that the meaning, you have no events that you can link any of this to, as I consciously have not a single enemy. And I would invite you to look at regulatory speech again. Again, I wouldn't say I'm not going to California if I were going to Bristol, if I were going home. So when I say I don't have a single enemy, what brain cells are firing me? Enemy. Think in terms of regulatory speech. If the truth was I was on friendly terms with everybody, and all of my bloodline and all of my generations and all of my data were all connected to love, I'd say, oh man, I don't get why this dream brought anything up, because I'm in harmony and in a space of love with everybody that I know. But when I say I can't think of consciously a single enemy, what's firing under the surface? Remember, my words fly up, my thoughts remain below. There's something there about enemies. And so I'd start doing worksheets around the idea of enemies. And then the final statement that you make, I suppose understanding what happened in the dream state was not real. Therefore, dump it. But it had to have come from somewhere. Yes, it sure did come from somewhere. And hopefully this has been a clue. And again, I want to put forward that I'm offering this as information for you to look at and see if it fits for you. If it doesn't, please throw it out. And when you say it came from somewhere, yes, when you say your dream state was not real, my offering is that your mind in a dream uses data to create the constructs that we experience at that moment. And remember, our definition of reality is that reality is a construct of a mind. So a dream is a reality. Now, it's not an actuality. So we're distinguishing between reality, which are the pictures in my mind that my mind generates at any given instant. Like at every moment, everybody got a reality. Mine won't usually match yours. Yours won't usually match mine. If there's a conflict, I have a different reality than you do. I have different brain cells firing in me, generating my reality. And so when you say it was not real, while it was not real, it is reflective of content in your mind because your mind has constructed a reality out of the content that's there. And so rather than just dumping it, I would say I'd look into how the feedback that we've offered so far has fit for you. And if it's fit, then dig out the worksheets and go to work. And if you could use any support with those worksheets, it'd be awesome to hear your voice live on the show. And I'd be happy to walk you through a worksheet or support you or give you feedback in any way, shape, or form that I can. And so that's my input on the question for the day, which is great. It's like we had an insightful question, and delighted that you sent it to us. And by the way, anybody, if you have questions, anytime on the show, just be part of the show, and you can ask your questions in the chat room or the comment space. You can push call and communicate with us on the app, wherever in the world you're from. This is one of the coolest things about this new app, Needle, is that nobody needs to make a phone call or use phone minutes. So anybody in the world can interact with us. And we'd appreciate it if you'd spread this information around the world to any of your friends that would like to engage in these tools. Our commitment is to take these tools quite literally to every mind, heart, and being on the planet. That's what we're here to do. And we're delighted that you've been here to share this space with us. I hope it fit. I hope it's meaningful. And thank you, Joe Bryson, for saying thank you. Joe put a thank you in the questions or in the comments. So much appreciation for being with us. I hope that this year for you will be the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. Thanks for joining us. Blessings. Bye-bye.